Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to No Tracers, the podcast all about urban exploring. This week on the show, I got another rooftopper. Let's get into it. Welcome to No Tracers, the podcast where I take you on an adventure through the hidden gems and forgotten corners of the world. From abandoned buildings and tunnels to rooftop views and street art, join me as we uncover the secrets of the urban landscape. With interviews from experienced explorers, tips and tricks for navigating the urban terrain, and thrilling first-hand accounts of their explorations. Get ready to discover the world like never before. Come explore with us. But remember, leave no trace. Welcome back to No Tracers. Hope you guys are excited for this episode with a rooftopper, Zach Visuals. He is a rooftopper. He also does some urbex in abandoned buildings, but for the most part, we're talking about climbing roofs and towers and crazy shit. So super excited for this episode. He's a great storyteller, and you guys know how I love a great story. So before we get into the show, just a couple things. First of all, thank you for listening to the podcast. If you are not subscribed to the show, please hit the subscribe button. I have new episodes come out every Friday and would like to have you come on the show. If you want to come on No Tracers, hit me up at no.tracers on Instagram, or you can hit me at contact@notracers.com. Speaking of notracers.com, if you go over there, there is a blog where you can see a bunch of my stories and adventures, as well as my merch store where I have 2 photography books about urban exploring and a bunch of t-shirts and merch items. If you want to support the show in any way, head over to notracers.com/shop. Thank you guys for listening to another episode. I'm super excited to get into this one. Before we do, I got to thank my partner on this podcast, Liquid Death Mountain Water. Super stoked that they have partnered with me for so long. Liquid Death is a water company, and they have just branched out into the iced tea realm. So if you guys are into water, which I hope you are, they have regular, still water, and they have sparkling water. They have 3 flavors of sparkling water as well, and then they've got 3 iced tea flavors for you guys to check out. Go to liquiddeath.com and use promo code just the letter K for 10% off your order. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into this episode. Zach, please introduce yourself and how long you've been exploring to the No Tracers audience.
All right, sick. What's up, everybody? I am Zach.visuals on Instagram. I do mostly roof-topping, but love a good bando from time to time, and I've been exploring since 2019, which is 4 years ago now. And
yeah. So what got you into it in the first place? What made you catch the bug?
It was from another friend of mine, because I probably got into photography and like media in general in like 2017, 2018. And I'm from around Charlotte, North Carolina, and I knew that there was a lot of photographers around there, and I was kind of building a portfolio and all that good stuff. And I was looking on Instagram to try and find some other photographers, and I found another guy that did rooftoping in Charlotte, who was like about the only one that did it at the time, because it's a relatively small city in comparison, and the scene is pretty small as well. So I hit him up and I'm like, dude, your stuff is insane. I'd love to come out with you one time. And of all the people, of all the messages that he gets, because every explorer gets those messages, and most of us don't like them, but out of everybody that sends him, oh my gosh, this is so cool messages, he's like, sure, what the heck, why not?
Wow.
And he brought me along, and I'm like, wow, this is insane.
So what did it feel like to like get that shot, to get that chance to like go do that and then get into the hobby?
It was, I mean, I was honored. I was like, man, this is crazy. Kind of the first, how it went, cause I had no idea I had zero idea what I was getting myself into at all. Cause it's one thing to start out, in a nice quiet bando in the middle of nowhere,
Sure.
Versus in the middle of the city. We hit this hotel, and, I'm wearing like business casual. I'm in like a short sleeve button up, and like, oh no, it was terrible. And I have my camera.
Trying to blend in, man.
Yeah, sure. And I'm like, so it was in the stairwell. We had to get in through the building, because even he back then wasn't super masterful on entry and all that stuff. But he had found that the only way in that he knew of at the time, we later found a door that's 1,000 times easier, but was how, in a lot of stairwells, there's kind of a gap. If you've got a stairwell that goes up and up and up, and there's landings, there's kind of a small gap in between that you can kind of see all the way down or all the way up or whatever. The stairwell to the parking garage connected to the stairwell in the building,
Oh.
with like this tiny little gap. But the only problem was it was probably 20 or so odd feet up up in the ceiling. Basically, it was up the wall and in the ceiling. And we would have needed the biggest ladder that you could get from a hardware store to even get up there. But this guy who I was hanging out with happened to be a parkour master, and he
Of course.
just Spider-Man's up the wall. Like as I blink, still don't know how he did it. And I'm just sitting there in awe, and I'm like, okay, so how do I get up there? So what we ended up doing is there's this light fixture, one of those industrial like flat light fixtures that was
Mhm.
on the wall. So I basically climbed up on like a rail, and then from there climbed over on top of this light fixture, and then he like found a washcloth, and he held down this washcloth, and I grabbed it, and he's like trying to pull me up, and
Oh my
I
god.
had zero upper body strength at the time, and he's trying to like pull me up, and I'm trying to pull myself up, and my arms are giving out, and like it ends up being he's basically just holding onto my arm, and I'm just dangling in this like it's just like dead weight dangling from this this stairwell gap thing. And it's a 20-foot drop. I'm breaking
Oh my
half the
god.
bones in my body if I fall. And he manages me to get me close enough to the ledge where I can grab on and muster the last bit of my strength. So already within the first hour, I've already almost died. So I'm like, all right, this is interesting, because I had never done anything dangerous really before this. And I'm like, okay, well, that was interesting. How much how much more exciting can it get? So we made it onto the roof, and I just fell in love with it, because it's like I've never seen the city from this perspective. From being above the noise, above everywhere else, and I was going through a pretty rough time, personally and emotionally at the time, and it's just like to get a break from all that and just really be above everything, was
Mm.
pretty indescribable, and I just haven't looked back since, basically.
Wow. So that's such a cool way of like getting into it. You got kind of thrown into the deep end there. It sounds like,
100%. Oh yeah,
but I think what better way than
exactly.
to
Yep.
send it completely,
That.
and
Mhm.
it's my question is like, how'd you guys get back down?
So once we were in the building, then we could just pretend like we were staying there, and we just went down the
Got it.
elevator and went out the
Okay.
lobby.
Just yep. Just sent it all the way up and
Oh yeah,
then
I
chilled on
definitely
the way
would have.
down.
I definitely would have broken something if I tried that again.
I had to ask. So, one of my questions is your most creative entrance, and I feel like that's a pretty creative entrance right there.
Oh, for sure, for sure. That's one. There's been many, but that's definitely
Sure.
one of them. Well, a good story that I always love telling, and this is way later, so I've got a lot more experience at this point. There was another hotel that was being built in my city. Very very nice hotel. It wasn't super high, but it was nice. And I was just walking around with my friend one night. It's probably 11:30 at night. And we see this construction site, and we're like, oh, let's go for a little full send. We just had dinner, it's whatever. So we go past the fence. It was just a nice little opening, and because it's so late, and it's like, we a weekend or something, we don't expect anybody to be there. It's just we expect it to be a breeze, slip right on in. We get into the site and some of the lower levels, and we spot some workers, and we run and hide before they see us. They didn't spot us or anything, so we're in the shadows. And I'm like, well, crap. How do we get our way out of this one? And he's like, I don't know. Do you just want to bail? I'm like, maybe we can spin this. So I look around, and I see behind us on this little pallet of construction materials, there's a couple construction vests that are just sitting on this table. So I'm like, you know what? So the idea hits me, and we go back. I throw him a vest. We both put on these vests, and we're not. I guess we're not really dressed raggedy, because we had just gone to dinner and we weren't really planning to do this. So I just straight up full send it. We walk out. I walk straight up to the construction workers, and I'm like, Hey gentlemen, how you guys doing? Fantastic night. Yep. So we're with property management, and they sent us down here to do some upper level assessments on the building, and
Stop.
they
No way.
they neglected to tell me that all of the doors for the stairwells had padlocks on them. I don't know if there's just like a communication error or something that's going on. So do you guys have like a service elevator or something that you could direct us to? And they're like, they pause for a second, just a second, and then he's like, oh yeah, sure, right this way. Kid you not, leads
Stop
us
it,
leads
dude.
us to
What?
the yep leads us to the service elevator, opens it up for us, and
Yo.
literally just lets us go. And
No fucking shot,
dude,
dude.
yep, and
Stop it.
the elevator takes us right to the top. We get on the roof, and
Bro.
that was that. And I'm like, this is way too good to be true. Like this is not happening. So we get all the shots. We end up trying to like there's some weird problem with it that we're having with the elevator. So I had like this elevator key that I had ordered from some website that had elevator keys to see if I could try and use it to bypass access points. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, management actually sent me down here with this elevator key. Maybe I could help you guys out. So I like help them with the elevator. So I'm literally like working there,
Oh
basically.
my god.
It was so funny. And so we leave, and I guess word got around the site that, management was here and they were doing some assessments, and they were helping us with the elevator. I don't know. But we go walking around, and we're just tooling around the city, and we're go to leave. We go back to our car, and we see that all the workers from that site were just getting off of work. It's probably 1 in the morning or something, and we hear one of the guys say, "Oh, look, it's the manager guys from earlier. They're still around." And then the foreman of the
Oh
entire
no.
site, yep, he like he budges past all the other workers, like, get out of my way. And he comes up to us, and he just starts screaming. He just starts yelling at us. And he's like, I don't know who you guys are, but I know you are not, the whole 9 yards. Don't you ever come to my site. I'll bust you. He's like threatening us. He's like all this
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm still like trying to keep the act up. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like name dropping companies that are like nearby. I'm like, oh, communication this, I spoke to Janice on the blah, blah, blah. And
Oh my god.
he's like, no, I am not buying your BS. I know those companies, and they're not working on this site. And I'm like, sorry, man, I don't know what to tell you. And so we just kind of go our separate ways and de-escalate a little bit. So that was wild for
Dude,
sure.
that's fucking crazy. What a what a great story. So you kind of got permission in a sense, sort of like you blagged your way through that one,
Yep,
but like have you
finessed
ever
it.
like actually gotten permission to explore a spot?
No, never.
Okay.
I've tried when I was early on,
Mhm.
even trying to say that I was, like a journalist with some reputable news media
Sure.
something, and it never works. They're always like, it's a liability problem,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we're gonna get sued. We can't. Sorry,
Yeah.
and that's
Got
about
you.
as far as I get.
For sure. So, take me into the mind of a rooftopper, a climber. Like, what makes you do this? This isn't like a normal, you don't see like Joe Schmo down the street just hitting cranes, Like,
Right.
what makes you keep going back to do this?
It's definitely the heights and the views is a huge part of it, but it's also the thrill and the adventure that you get for being as part of this. Because every single time that we go to the city, every single time it's like the start of our own Mission Impossible movie.
Mm,
Like every single time, we always are doing some crazy stuff. We're always climbing up some ledge to get up onto a balcony to find an access door or a hatch or whatever. We're always finding creative tools that no one has ever heard of to get through a roof door that's got 6 locks on it or
huh,
whatever. We're always doing, the most out of the box, crazy creative stuff. It's always a problem to solve. There's always, it's like a puzzle in a sense.
definitely. Definitely.
So yeah, that's definitely a huge part of it, because it's always a huge adventure. And it's also the thrill, not just the thrill of it, but like the how barely anybody gets to go to these places. And that's something that you can also say with bandos is, no one's been here in however many years, and that's pretty cool. And it's also like with these rooftops and like access tunnels and access hatches and stuff like that, your everyday person is never in a million years going to go anywhere cool like this. Like they're going to maybe go to an observation tower, and that's it. Like only maintenance people will come up here a couple times a year, and that's it. And that's just
Yeah.
another cool factor of it.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I make a lot of documentaries, and one of the ones I want to do is about the remote tower builders, like the
Hmm.
guys that get like flown out by a helicopter into the middle of nowhere and build the cell towers. Like
Right.
I'm dying to capture what they do, because you're right, like it's very rare that people are doing these things, and oftentimes it's just the builders or just the maintenance guys that are
Yep.
changing the light on top of the tower or the crane or whatever. So
Yep.
it's such a fascinating thing, like to get into the mindset of somebody like yourself that does a lot of roofs and climbs. And it's always been fascinating to me, and I've been watching videos for years online. But when I started this podcast, it was solely for abandoned stuff. But
Sure.
the more I do it, the more I'm like, wait, there's more than just that as far as
Oh yeah.
urban exploring goes. You've got the
Yep.
rooftoppers, the train hoppers,
Yep.
you've got the tunnel, the drainers, there's all
Oh
kinds of
yeah.
different people that are in this big hobby, and it's just like one big umbrella. So it's been super cool to like connect with people like yourself and hear these stories.
For sure.
So for you, have you ever been injured while hitting a spot, or have you ever had any like near misses or anything like that?
There's definitely been plenty of near misses. I don't think I've ever been like seriously hurt or anything like that. There's a million close calls where you're shimmying along this edge and you have to climb over this thing and you lose your footing for half a second, but it's just long enough to make your heart fall. Plenty of those moments that really makes you realize you do have to be careful, because one step and there's very little margin for error in some of it. And you just got to know your limits. A lot of people will say that, and understand wind, and like how bad's the weather, how slippery are these surfaces. Like check your surfaces if you're going to be running and doing crazy stuff for a GoPro on the edge,
Hmm.
because a lot of the metal and the materials that they use on roofs can get very, very slippery. So it's like there's a lot more technicality that goes into it than a lot of people think, especially if you try and bring, like parkour into it, or any kind
Right.
of movement that isn't just sitting up there for 2 seconds. Because it's like if you're jumping between or you're climbing, how sturdy is this surface? How is it loose? Can it hold your weight? If a gust of wind comes up, will you be fine? Stuff like that. Um, that's a big part of it.
So, how has your athleticism changed over time? Like, the more you do this, are you finding yourself doing more of that like parkour style stuff, or are you still kind of like training yourself? Like, where are you at in your journey as far as like the athleticism goes with all this stuff that you do?
There was a time, kind of when I was a year into it or so, where I was training parkour pretty regularly, and then I kind of got busy with other life, and that slowed down a little bit. It's definitely something that I want to get back into, because parkour is a lot of fun. It's like you have to be in shape to do it.
Mhm.
You've got to train it regularly to get that muscle memory and stuff like that. So I'm definitely, I've regressed a little bit, but it's definitely something that I want to get back into. It. You have to at least maintain, a decent level of strength just to at least hold your own weight. Because if you are, on a cell tower and you're going up a ladder that stretches up a half a mile, that's you gotta be able to hold yourself through that. And I've struggled with that a little bit, because especially when you get to the top of some of those towers, they do the dumbest things where for whatever reason they tilt the ladder
Yeah, yeah.
backwards, so you're
Oh, so
literally
you're
like
climbing on an
you're
incline.
climbing on an opposite
Dude.
incline, basically, where if your legs weren't like hugging the thing, you would just be hanging there basically. And the people that work on them don't care, because they're in full 3-point
Right,
harnesses.
right.
But us with zero anything, that's a little bit, got to be a little careful there.
Wow. Okay, so share with me your scariest or your riskiest exploration.
Ooh, there's been a lot. Scariest or riskiest exploration. There's been a couple like abandoned towers that I've hit that have been a little scary, just because when you mix like doing abandoned exploration with rooftoping, that's not always the best thing because of how rickety old buildings can get. And when you start climbing on edges and like rusty ladders, they start to wiggle and fall, and roofs will cave in and stuff like that. I think I almost went through a roof on one abandoned tower, probably 13 stories up or so, where the floor
Damn.
started to get a little mushy, and you just like feel your foot start to go, and you just had to step back and you'd be like, yeah, we're not we're not doing that. So
Oh my god.
that was definitely pretty scary. Another big aspect that we have to worry about that can be scary is just security or law enforcement, that can just patrol these types of sites and stuff like that, because it's one thing to twist an ankle, but it's also another thing to be arrested and have a record and all that stuff, and that can be scary to
Yeah.
us for sure. So it's like there was one time where we had a straight police helicopter on us with a searchlight, at the same time where there was like all these cop cars screeching around corners, trying to get us, and it was wild. It's like a big skill that I tell anybody in the exploring space to learn is just how to talk, how to be sociable, and just like how to think on your feet, because you can, if you're good enough at talking, you can almost talk your way out of
Mhm.
anything. And you don't even have to be lying. You could just be friendly and say it was an honest mistake and you didn't know how big of a deal it was that you just broke into that site. And I mean, as ludicrous as that sounds to us, it works, because as soon as all those cops got out of their cars and they were screaming at us and all this stuff, it's like as soon as I calmed them down, I'm like, hey, we're I'd made up some story about being journalists who wanted archival footage and
Mm,
whatever, but as long as you're calm and you keep them calm and you're respectful and stuff like
right.
that, generally you'll get out of most things.
Definitely. So, has anything ever made you want to stop exploring or take a break? Like, have you ever had a situation where you're like, "Whew, I gotta like chill for a second?"
Um, Not really, honestly,
Okay.
because even in like, sure, you'll want to take a break from like a spot sometimes if that spot almost gets busted or
Yeah.
something similar like that. But it's like, even I remember a time where I, got busted trying to break the door down or something like that, and that was terrifying. But it's like we within the hour we were already on another roof. So it's like once you it's different with everybody for sure,
Yeah.
because there are some people that would happen to them and they'd be like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. But not really. I mean, the biggest thing is just if you get busy in life and you don't really have time to explore, with other work or something like that, then
Mhm.
it's harder to get into it. And my biggest problem is I live like an hour and some change from my city, so kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it's like if I want to rooftop, I've got to make the hour drive, and that can get annoying
Yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, that's the biggest thing.
So, speaking of like work getting in the way of doing this stuff, like what do you do when you're not exploring? What's your like normal life?
Yeah, so normal life is I work in real estate. So I've got a real estate license, and I work with investors, and I fly around the country with some guys that own apartment complexes all around the southeast. And I help them. I kind of translate my skills with photography and videography that I kind of built while exploring, to
Mm,
translate that into real world work, as far as marketing and social media, like like marketing and stuff like that, because now I can approach these guys and be like, hey, I'm good with the camera, I can
right.
help bolster your social media presence, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm kind of like trying to put myself in the rooms with the people that you want to become, from a financial standpoint, and just that you want to learn from. So it's like I started out as a small real estate broker, and now I'm in the room with a lot of influential people,
Wow.
learning everything that they have to tell me, and they all think I'm crazy because I tell them all the stuff I do, but they respect it.
That's awesome. What does your family think of what you do?
They honestly, they're just like, be safe. That's the
Cool.
biggest thing. It's like, they were a little like, when you first started, but it's like once you realize that I'm not stopping and it's something that I'm just gonna do, it's like
Yeah,
just be careful, you know.
for sure. Awesome. Do you have any goal places, like bucket list spots that you're dying to hit?
Oh, plenty. I go to LA a lot. I'm
Oh,
probably
okay,
there
for sure.
once every other month, and I love LA. Rooftops. I love the rooftops
Oh
of
yeah.
LA. I don't. The city's kind of trashy, but
I agree. I agree. I lived in California for 8 years, and every
yeah.
time I go back to LA, I'm like, God damn it, it's the
Yep.
apocalypse here.
Literally, and the traffic is a
It's
nightmare.
oh god, it's horrible. But the rooftops are pretty choice, man.
Oh yeah, it's a
Not gonna lie.
whole nother world when you're on the rooftops. Feels like a whole different
Definitely.
city.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they've got a couple buildings there that I would love to get on. The Ritz Carlton there is
Yep.
a super killer spot that I've been dying to hit. I know some people that have done the Spire and the U.S.
Yeah.
Bank.
Yep. Yep.
Those spots are super hot right now, and
Hmm.
probably shouldn't hit them for a while, but
All right.
maybe someday.
Yeah, that's definitely like it's I mean, it's the tallest building in Los Angeles, you know. Of
Yep.
course you want to
Oh
hit
yeah.
that to be on top of literally the world out there is
Oh
like
yeah.
gotta
Exactly.
be crazy. I've
I would love
seen,
that.
plenty of videos from that, but
Yep.
it's a wild place and I don't know if I could do it personally. I've climbed one crane and I was like, "Ah, I might be
Yep.
good. I might
Oh
be
yeah.
sticking to abandoned places." It takes a
Yep.
certain kind of person to be able to do that, fearlessly because
For
like
sure.
the apprehension will kill you,
Oh
like
yeah.
it will
Exactly.
get you hurt
Yep.
very badly and, sometimes fatally. But um so what's the farthest you've traveled to go exploring?
The farthest that I've traveled is Europe. Actually,
Okay.
I spent a couple weeks in Europe, going around France, the Netherlands, Belgium, those places. I really only did exploring in France.
Mhm.
I wish I spent more time doing it because there's so much incredible stuff over there. Like I've seen recently, like the abandoned mansions and stuff. It's
Yeah, oh
still
my
like
god.
full of furniture and artwork and all this stuff. And
Right.
so I definitely need to go back. But probably my coolest story from exploring over there is I was in Arras, France, and a smaller city, probably an hour from Paris, and they had this cathedral or bell tower or whatever you want to call it, and it was huge and grand and stone and had gargoyles and all this cool stuff hanging off of
Wow.
it. And it wasn't the hardest thing because it was like you could pay a couple euros and go up kind of towards the top on a
Mhm.
balcony. And I'd found a little rusty stairwell, climbed a little gate, and was on my way. But what was really cool about that is just how different it was from everything that I've explored around here and in the States because of just how historic and old that it was. Like all the doors and all the ladders were clearly ancient and made of heavy wood and iron
Mm.
and all this stuff, which was really neat. And I did get scared to death because I neglected to remember that the bells would toll every 10 minutes or something like that. So here I am walking literally within inches of all these
Oh, god
bells that can
damn.
be heard within miles of the city,
Oh
and
my god.
they just go off, and I'm just, oh yeah, it wasn't fun.
Oh my god, your brain's rattling inside your skull.
Yep,
Just like,
literally.
"Fuck this,
Hmm.
get me out of here." Oh my
Yep.
god. So, talk to me a little bit about the social media aspect of this. Like, what has social media done for you? How do you feel about social media and the rooftoping community? Like, just bring me into, like, that side of this hobby for you.
For sure. So it's definitely I definitely appreciate it because it's opened a lot of doors for me, and I think that it can be used as an asset and a tool for business as
Mhm.
well as from an expression sense of being able to get your artwork and your art form out there. So I respect that a lot. Just it's a double edged sword. Be careful with it. Is what I tell people a lot. I've gotten busted from social media once because I posted too early after a climb,
Mm, mhm.
and that wasn't a fun time. But so yeah, just be careful. But it's a good way to get out there. It's a great way to meet new people. I wouldn't have half as many the friends that I do today if it wasn't for
For sure.
social media and just reaching out to people and making those connections.
Absolutely. So, what do you hope for the future of urban exploring?
Um, I'm really hoping that security as a whole doesn't advance to where I think it's going to advance to, because right now in in grocery stores and Walmarts, you're seeing them start to integrate artificial intelligence into
Right.
their security systems, and facial recognition and stuff like that, and it's just going to make things a lot more complicated for explorers that are trying to get into different spots, because before long, these huge property management organizations are going to have lists of names, and they're going to know our faces, and you're going to have to wear masks and glasses everywhere, and it's just going to be annoying. So I'm hoping that it's not going to go in that direction, and if it does, I'm hoping that the exploring community as a whole will really pull together and innovate, and find
Yeah.
just
Adapt
smart,
to it.
yeah, adapts and find good solutions to these problems.
All the Urbex tech wizards out there start getting to work on like
Oh
face
yeah.
scramblers or
Yep.
something, like
Oh
some
yeah.
mask that like scrambles with the the
Just some kind of
actual
blade
AI.
blade
Yeah,
blade
yeah.
runner
Yeah, yeah,
activity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yep.
mean, if we're going into the future, let's go into the future.
Exactly.
Look it
I'm
up.
here for it.
Okay. So, um what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started exploring?
Um, One thing is just how to get through a door, because when I first started, I would find a simple locked door and just be stuck trying to open it for an hour, hour and a half at a time, when now it'll take me 10 seconds flat. So
Damn.
learn your if you're doing any kind of anything that has doors, learn how locks work, learn how doors work. As boring as it can be, I'll sit there and watch YouTube videos of security guys that just do like door type security or whatever for a living, and just learn all there is to know about it. Just I guess learning in general, just taking the time to figure out all the aspects of what it is you do and how to better yourself at
Mm,
those things.
absolutely. So, I started integrating something a couple of episodes ago, and I wanted to get my guests to ask the next guest a question without knowing
Ooh,
who that next guest is.
okay.
So, my last guest was discovering Tegan, and her question to you is, what was your most adventurous exploration?
My most adventurous exploration. I feel like they're all adventurous, but dang, if I gotta pick one. There was a very spontaneous exploration, and this actually isn't a rooftoping story. This is kind of of an urbex story in a sense. So it's very spontaneous, and the spontaneous ones can sometimes be the most adventurous. I was in Long Beach, California, and I was, how they have the Queen Mary, right?
Yes.
And for the past couple of years, there's been this like old Soviet submarine that's been
Mhm.
parked and locked up tight next to the Queen Mary. Well, I didn't really know much about it, so when I was only in Long Beach for the day, and I was walking next to it, and I'm like, I wonder if there's any way to get in that submarine. So just completely spontaneously, I just hop the fence, walk the gangplank, get down in there and just start poking around. And sure enough, there was a hatch that was just, for whatever reason that day, left wide open.
No shit.
So I had a flashlight on me, and I just, climbed down the hatch and just started poking around. And it was the coolest thing ever, because it was like still all this Soviet stuff and like Russian writing, and like
Wow.
you could look through like the peephole or whatever that they used to spot ships, and it was still kind
Yeah.
of working, and it was, you could see where the missile, like this torpedoes would go and all that stuff.
Wow.
And that was pretty adventurous, I'd have to say.
That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So, do you have a question for my next guest on the podcast?
Um, you might have to give me a second.
Yeah, no worries. Take
That's
your
a good
time.
one.
Yeah.
Next guess, podcast question. I would say ask them, kind of, it might be a little deeper one, as
Sure.
far as like risk goes and risk management. Whatever it is, that's like what kind of spot that you're hitting, whether it's a bando, whether it's a roof, where do they draw the line as far as how risky it is and what they're
Mm,
doing? I think that might be
that's
a
a
good
good
one.
one, man. That's a good one. Yeah. Where do you draw the line on like the risk? And so,
Right.
can you answer that question? Where do you draw the line?
Sure. I'd say it is like, do I feel like when I'm scoping it out and doing reconnaissance, do I feel like there's something where there's more than like a 50% chance of getting busted here? Are there too many cameras? Are there too many motion sensors? Or do they have, armed patrol, or do they have people patrolling or something like that? If I feel like there is too big of a chance that I'm going to get busted, then I'll probably skip out on that spot.
Gotcha. Good answer, man. So if people want to keep following your journey into the great heights that you climb and the great places you explore, where can they find you online?
For sure. Best place is Instagram, Zach.visuals, Zach. A lot of people think it's spelled with a K, which is the inferior way to spell it, I might add. No offense to the Zachs out there. And then just search up Zach Visuals on YouTube, where I'm trying to do a little more consistent stuff there, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, hopefully the audience here can give you a little push in the right direction with that, because we love seeing the video content. So thank you so much for coming on No Tracers and for sharing your story with everybody. It's been super cool to talk to you.
For sure. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that was another episode of the No Tracers podcast. If you guys like this one, please do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback. It helps the podcast grow in the charts, and it helps other listeners just like you find this show. If you dig it, please share it with some friends. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to come on the show, please hit me up at no.tracers. I would love to get more rooftoppers, some train hoppers, some graffiti artists. I'd love to get the whole gamut of urban explorers on this podcast. So help me reach those out there that might be interested in listening to the show or coming on the show. Thank you guys for listening to another episode. This has been No Tracers. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, go explore something, and remember, leave no trace.